sometimes the biggest lesson that I've learned lately is we're all human beings, not necessarily human doings. God doesn't want us to be human doings. He wants us to be human beings so that we can be with Him. Some of my greatest moments have been in my chair with my Bible and the Kleenex box and Jesus. Just being. That's what He wants. He wants you to trust Him and love Him. He wants a relationship with you. He doesn't want the rules and regs and, go through the motions. Marriage wouldn't last very long if you did that. Our Savior needs as much of our time and our heart than our spouse does.
No matter what it is that we are experiencing, because sometimes we have the privilege of being up on the mountaintop. And those of you who've had the privilege of going to the mountains, isn't there such gorgeous beauty in the mountains? And there's something about it that you see all that vastness and all that beauty, and it's almost like you can just breathe it in. And life can be that way. We can have those mountaintop experiences where things are going well and we're just enjoying how God is working in our lives. And then there are the times that we go through the dark valleys. And it doesn't feel the same, does it? By any means. The beauty that is so gorgeous on the mountaintop fades into a strange darkness in the valleys. And rather than breathing in peace and life, you can almost feel like you can't breathe at all, or you're choking what you can get in. We played the song last week, I Need You Now. It's the name of the song. At a point in my life many, many years ago, I was going through one of the most difficult things at that time I had ever experienced, and that was the song I played over and over. And there's a line in the song that says, just keep breathing, just keep breathing. But here's what I want to ask you this morning. Is God working any less through the dark valleys than He is when we're on the mountaintops? No, if possible, He's working even more in the dark valleys, because we have a greater need for Him during those times. And so don't you give up. Whatever you're facing, whatever you're struggling with, the thing that we need to do, Jeff, and I would share that with y'all too since you're here with me, the thing that we need to do is always go back to the Lord. God, what do I need to understand? I'd like to understand everything, but maybe I don't need to. What do I need to understand right now? Give me a word. And then we need to go to His word and spend that time with Him. So I want to just encourage you with that brief word, and let that be an introduction to our special surprise guest today that's going to share with us something maybe along those lines, whatever God has on her heart. Miss Kim, would you come and share?
Good morning. I was talking to Brother Jeff on the phone, and I was telling him a little bit about what I've been going through the past couple of years, because I haven't been here much. And I'm sure maybe some of you have wondered why, but he said, would you mind sharing that on Palm Sunday? And I said, oh, sure, without even thinking about it. And then I hung up the phone and I said, well, I got weeks to prepare for this. And Mitch said, no, Kim, Sunday is Palm Sunday. And I had to Google it. I didn't believe him. And so here I am. And I'm here to tell you my story. I come from a long line of storytellers, and that's kind of what I do. But I'm used to singing my stories, not talking them. So give me a little breathing room. every good story has a beginning where characters are introduced, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about me so that you'll understand what has happened, what God has done in my life. When I was 20, I went to a nutritionist with my dad. We were both had the case of the chubbies, and we wanted to lose weight. It was way back in the 70s, and we had a little interview with the nutritionist, and then she took routine blood, and then called me back in a panic and said, I need you to come to my office immediately. Okay. So I went back and I said, what's the deal? And she said, do you know what cholesterol is? I don't know. I know my dad has high cholesterol, and he had open heart surgery at 36. And she says, do you know what triglycerides are? And I said, no, I'd never heard that word, can't spell it. And she said, triglycerides are the fat, the protein that flows through your blood. And it flows through every organ. And if you break it down, hyper, high, lipo, fat, demia, blood, hyperlipidemia. So I was diagnosed at 20 with that. My triglycerides, your normal triglycerides, for all of you out there, they used to say they wanted it to be at 250. Now they're stingy and they want 150. My triglycerides were 6,000 plus, normally. And one time, my ex-husband, I was out to dinner with him and my dad and mom, and I started feeling this pain right here, a horrendous pain worse than labor. And I begged my husband to, take me to the ER. There's something wrong. And I laid there on the gurney, and they were like, we don't know what's going on with you. Let's take blood. So they took blood, and a few minutes later, this little Chinese guy, and I mean little Chinese guy, comes into my room, and he said, who are you? And I said, are you alcoholic? I said, no, I'm not alcoholic. And he said, look at your blood. You should be dead. He said, look at your blood. Your blood should look like this. And it was red with a white ring around the top. Mine was white with a red ring around the bottom. He said, you got milk. You got milk in your blood. You're going to die. Well, that started it all. And for the next 45 years, 6 states later, every doctor that I went to, I would shock when they would take routine blood. And I would say to them, okay, I want to tell you ahead of time, you're going to freak on me. I've got hyperlipidemia, and when I say hyperlipidemia, I'm talking off the charts. And they all say, oh, okay, no big deal. So it became my kryptonite. For the next 45 years, there was nothing in my body that the kryptonite didn't affect. I had 2 heart attacks in that 45 years, lost my gallbladder, had countless pancreatitis attacks, to the point that now my pancreas, as my doctor said, is all chewed up. I said, is that a medical term, chewed up? He said, it looks like a sponge. There's nothing left of it. And now, liver disease on top of it. And I thought, well, you know what? I was, have on my driver's license, I'm going to be an organ donor. Nobody's going to want my organs. They may want my body for science to figure out what a freak I was and how in the world did she live to be as old as she did. Because every doctor for the past 45 years has said, you're going to die. You are going to die. And the first one said, You're not going to see 30. You're never going to have children. You're never going to be a grandmother because you're going to die. And I said to that doctor, who was such a smart aleck, I said, look, I don't have an expiration date on the bottom of my foot. I said, only God knows the day and time that I'm going to go meet with him, not you. And I said, I choose to live. God gives us a choice sometimes. Do you want to live? And that's scriptural. Do you want to live? Do you want to die? And he says, if I was you, I'd live. So I just had to put my trust in him. And here I am. I'm 66 now. And I'm still alive. Now, it's been a hard 45 years. Now, I gotta stop there for just a second, a little cliffhanger. Anybody that's been a Christian for more than 15 minutes probably knows the story of the lady with the issue of blood. I always like that story because I'm a woman with issue of blood. And there's 3 Gospels of the 4 that talk about her. And I always pictured her on the ground because she touched the hem of Jesus' garment. Now, what I found amazing about that story as I went back to read on it, one of the Gospels gives a very detailed account of it. And it says that Jesus was walking through a crowd, and every time his hand would touch somebody, they would get healed. I mean, just bing bong all over. He was squished by people, bumping, and you know how it's been at Walmart or you're at Sam's, and I hate those crowds. Peter's standing there next to him, and all of a sudden Jesus stops, and he said, who touched me? Somebody touched me. I felt power come out of me. He says, Lord, everybody's been touching you. He said, no, somebody different touched me. And I picture this lady on the ground, and she had an issue of blood for 12 years, so you can imagine how weak she was. All she could do was crawl. But she said in her heart, if I could just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be healed. She had spent all the money she had in doctors, and it was only worse. I can relate. And I picture myself on the ground, crawling to Jesus, touching him, and just saying, if you will, you can heal me. I know you can. And he turned to her and he said, woman, your faith has made you whole. And suddenly, took 12 years, but suddenly, God showed up and took that issue of blood away. So bring us back to the present. I've been in and out of the hospital, I don't know, Mitch keeps count for me, I don't know, in the past couple of years. And the last time I was in, it was almost unto the point of death. It really was. Pastor Jeff came to visit. I think he regretted it later because I was screaming, being the pain, and I was telling him I want to go home. You can't go home, you're sick. No, I'm not talking about Mosley Crossing home. I'm talking Jesus home. I'm tired of this. 45 years of excruciating pain. And now you're telling me my liver's shutting down? I had IVs. I looked like Frankenstein. I had IVs on both sides of my bed. And all of a sudden they started giving me insulin. I'm not diabetic. That's the one thing I was proud of. Hey, I'm not a diabetic. Well, you are now because your pancreas doesn't work anymore. And so all I could do was lay there and scream in pain because anything they gave me didn't help. And I said to God, you know what? I'm tired. I'm just tired. I don't know what I've done for you in my life. You know, we're human beings. I wanted to be a human doing. And I felt like I had spent my life just trying to stay alive. I felt like I hadn't done anything for him. Brother Jeff asked me one time, if you died, what would you do? And I said, I'd go to heaven, but I'd go a failure. Because I didn't do anything for God. I was always trying to just stay alive. And I was so tired. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to be with people. I never really asked God why. I just figured this was my cross to bear. So I wasn't mad at him. I was hurt. Because I said, you know what? Thank you for my life, but it sucks. It's been bad. The pain and the sorrow and the tribulation and the sickness has outweighed the joy and the peace. Where is that? Do I have to wait till I get to heaven to have joy and peace and live without pain? Because this is horrible. And the treatment is equally as horrible. My daily treatment is really annoying. It keeps me pretty well locked in my house most of the time. Well, on February 1st, I went to see the only endocrinologist in the city of Meridian. It takes forever to get in to see him. But if you're dying, he'll get you in early. And so I went in. If any of you women know Michael Bublé, that's what he looks like. I may be 66, but he's pretty yummy.
Yes, I have to admit.
Oh yeah, I saw you there. I know that. And he's really sweet and incredibly brilliant. And I said to him, what gives? They have tried to shove pills down my throat. They've tried to give me all this medication. And you're giving me insulin? Well, what more? What do you want from me? He said, Kim, I'm glad you have pancreatitis. Well, thank you. Great bedside manner you got there. And he said, insulin is going to save your life. It's going to tell your pancreas, finally, what to do. And I said, I'm not worried about my pancreas. I'm worried about my kryptonite, my triglycerides. And every time doctor would take my blood work, I am now known by first name by the lab people down at Baptist. Because I walk in the door and they go, oh, there's Kim Breazeale. And every time I go in there and they take blood from my triglycerides, I break the machine. It can't count that high, and the machine breaks, and they have to call their tech, and the tech comes in and recalibrates it. And it always comes back abnormal. It always says 4,000 plus. Well, it freaks everybody out. And I just told him, just promise me you won't freak out. Just do that for me. I left, and he spent, you know how most doctors in Meridian, which I find kind of odd, are off on Fridays? He went in his office on Friday, and he did a study on me. And he found out that I was misdiagnosed when I was 20. And I don't know if it's so much misdiagnosed as maybe what it was is they didn't know about it. You know, they didn't know what I had. I have to read this because I can't pronounce it. If you Google it, all you have to do is Google FCS. And that stands for Familia, family, Chylomicronemia syndrome. That's a long word for she was born with this. It's part of a DNA mutation. yuck, what a horrible word. And there was nothing that I was ever going to be able to do about it. I got it from my dad. He got it from his dad. His dad died at 67. My dad died at 79 of heart failure. Here's me with 2 heart attacks, pancreatitis, liver inflammation, gastroparesis. I got a little machine in my stomach that makes things move. I'm like, what was that in the 70s, the $1 Million Man with all the pieces and parts? Well, that's what I feel like now. And he says to me, that's the bad news. FCS, that's the bad news. It's not curable. It's terminal. And if you did nothing, you got about 2 to 3 years. That's it. And if anybody was here back a few weeks ago or a month ago, I came to the altar, which I'm not usually going to the altar, but I came. And the Lord said to me, I want you to share this with your family because you're going to need them. And so everybody prayed for me, and I was so thankful for that. And I do thank you now for praying for me and keeping me, even though I haven't been here. So he says there's one thing that we can do. First of all, FCS is extremely rare. 1 in 300 million people get it. Now, Mitch always told me I was 1 in a million, but come to find out, I'm 1 in 300 million. Well, that didn't give me the warm fuzzies, not even a little bit. I said, okay, so what do we do about it? I'm a freak. What do we do? It is 2026, there has to be something. He said, there is. He said, there's a medicine that they have now. You give it by an injection. And you can only get it at one pharmacy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They ship it to you on ice. Once every 30 days, you give yourself the shot. And it miraculously is supposed to lower the triglycerides. Well, I said, okay, let's do that. And he said, well, bad news is I've never gotten an insurance company to approve it. And he said, because the medicine is $600,000 a year, $48,000 a shot. And I'm not one to post on Facebook, but I actually took a picture of the shot and put it on there and said, if you ever want to know what a $48,000 shot looks like, here it is. I said, $600,000. Do you have a plan B? Because my insurance company, they're not going to they wouldn't even pay for my glasses. I said, no, they're not going to do it. And he said, and then I want to put you on a pump that you slide in your pocket, and it pumps insulin into your body 24 hours a day.
It's the best thing they've ever made, it.
And said, that's $10,000. I just started laughing at him. I said, you don't know who you're talking to. Stuff like that, no. I better start getting my affairs in order. And I just prayed, please don't let me die of pancreatitis. I don't want to go out of this world screaming. I just don't. I'm tired. Just let me go to sleep and wake up in your arms. I wasn't giving up because I believe Jesus heals. If I drop dead right here, Jesus still heals. He does. It's not his, when people say, oh, it's plan B. I mean, it's his will. It's always his will. It may not be our timing, but it's always his will. It's for goodness. That's why he said choose life. So, my little conflict came when I was driving home from the doctor's office that day. And I said, okay, Lord, it's time for me and you to have a talk. This was the climax of the story, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I don't have a lot of people that I talk to. I don't have a lot of people that I confide in. So it was just me and him driving home. And I said, look, you know what's been going on for the last 45 years. And I've never questioned you. I've never cursed you. I've never been mad at you. I've always just taken it on the chin, and here we go again. I said, but I'm tired. My husband doesn't deserve this. My children don't deserve this. My grandchildren deserve to have a grandma that can play with them. And I cried all the way home. And I said, I'm going to tell you something right now. You know that I believe anything you tell me. Anything. If you tell me you're going to do something, I stand on it. You'd have to come at me with an army. Because once I had a pastor one time that said, faith begins when the will of God is known. And I said, I need to know what your will is. It's time for us to get serious. You're either going to heal me, treat me, or you're going to take me home. Please, take me home. I'm tired and I have nothing to give you. I've done nothing for you in my life. I got saved in the 7th grade and I had visions of grandeur. I was going to be a singer. I was going to be a preacher. I was going to be a missionary. I was going to live for God. I'm a singer, and I have lived for God. I've stumbled, I've fallen, I've rebelled. You know, all of us are young at one point. But I've never stopped believing, and I've never stopped loving. Never. He was always my first love, and always will be. And my husband knows that. And he's happy about that, actually. So, as we're driving along, I said, I got a few more miles to go, so let's just make a pact. You either come through for me, or you take me home now. I'll get my affairs in order, I'll write my letters to my children, and we'll call it good. And I'll finally get to hug you. I get home and my phone starts ringing. I just left the doctor's office. And it's Abby. Her name was Abby. And Abby says, Kim, you're not going to believe this. I said, what? She said, I don't see Dr. Lott get giddy very often. He's downright giddy. And I had to call and tell you. I said, why is he giddy? She said, because you were approved for the $600,000 shot. I just drove from Baptist to Collinsville. In just that time, and suddenly, God showed up. And I said, what? I mean, I was standing in my living room, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with my hands. I was just amazed. Why are we amazed when God answers our prayers? That's something to ponder for a while. But anyway, I was amazed. And I was like, who do I tell? Who do I tell this to? Who's going to understand how much this means to me? So, of course, I told Mitch first. And I was like, oh. And he said, okay, slow, stop babbling, tell me your story. I told him. He teared up right along with me. He said, oh good, I wasn't ready to lose you. So the next thing I get is a phone call from who I call Dan the Man. Dan the Man is the pharmacy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And he says, I've never known anybody with FCS. I'm a nerd, so I had to study it. Whoa, that's all I can say. The life expectancy, I'm sure you're aware of. And I said, yep, I know. He said, but you got approved. You're the only person in the state of Mississippi that has gotten approved for this medicine. He said, you're 1 in 300,000. And I said, what do I do, Dan? Tell me what to do. So he says, all right, once every 30 days, you're going to get a cooler, like a picnic cooler, for one little shot. Oh, I got coolers a go-go now. He said, I'm going to send you this cooler. It's going to have a frozen pen. It looks like kind of an EpiPen. And he said, it's going to have little gold speckles. And I used to tease the doctor and say, 600,000, it better be liquid gold coming in there to kill that kryptonite. And he said, no, this is how you take it. Don't know what's going to happen. It's only been out since Christmas of 25. And I said, no, wait a minute. They did do testing, yes. I don't want to grow a third eye or an extra limb. You know, I'm willing to try anything, but, you know, I don't want to make it worse. $600,000 is a whole lot of money. They even paid my deductible. They paid everything. Everything. Big zero to me. Nothing. So I get this styrofoam box from FedEx. I open it up. There's a teeny tiny little shot. And there's all this information about FCS and the shot and how to do it. And I'm all giddy. And Mitch picks up, kind of a little comic relief here. Mitch picks up the invoice and he says, okay, well, you should have a book about FCS and you should have a little booklet about the medicine and you should, a toe tag? Why did you get a toe tag? And I said, oh my gosh! Well, they take me from beginning to end. You know, if this thing is going to kill me, I get my own personal toe tag. And it wasn't a toe tag. It was a tote bag.
I just read it wrong.
He read it wrong. I said, whew, good to know. They sent me a journal. They want me to write all this stuff out. The doctor says, oh, I'm so excited, Kim. I'm going to write American Medical Association. I'm going to write a paper on you. I said, oh, you better get my name spelled right. It is never spelled right. It's Kimberly with 2 E's and Breazeale. Write it down. Get my name right, and I want to kick up the action. You know, if you get anything out of this, hello. You know, at least remember me. So, next thing I know, I get another phone call. Well, the doctor wants to see you. Okay, I come in. Oh, it's time for your pump. I said, a pump? I thought I got the $600,000 shot. He goes, oh no, you gotta have the pump too. I said, that's $10,000. He said, well, they paid for it. So I now have a $10,000 pump that I don't know how to use. Well, I have an appointment on April 1st for teaching because I told her I was a techno-weenie and didn't understand how to do things. And so I took the shot for February, and it was no big fanfare, no trumpets blasting, you know. Gave me the shot. Said, okay, now we wait. And I go on through my day and go through my weeks, and oh, here comes March. I give me my shot. Here comes the FedEx man with my little shot, and I give it to me. And then on the 24th of March, I went back to the doctor again, and he said, Kim, I know that they say it's going to take 3, 4, 5 months for any kind of change in your triglycerides. I said, yeah, well, I had gotten used to not getting my hopes up because every medication I've ever taken in my life didn't work. And I was still 4,000 plus, and I was still breaking the machines down at Anderson. I'm gonna get a bill one day, I know. And so he said, I'm like a kid at Christmas. You gotta go get blood. I know I'm not supposed to look, I'm not supposed to ask now, but I gotta know. I gotta know what's happening. If that thing comes down to 3,999, I'll be happy. Because the machine would only go to 4,000. So you have no idea what the number actually is. So I said, okay. I go down to the lab. I sit down. The lady goes, oh, Kim Breazeale. Hey, Kim Breazeale is here. Oh, dang it, they're gonna break the machine again. And the lady in the back is yelling because I'm there to break the machine again, and the technician had already gone home for the day. And I said, sorry. Yeah, welcome to my world. She takes the blood, and we all go home. We call it a day. That evening, my phone goes ding. And how many of you know what my chart is? You have your little my chart thing? And sometimes my chart will give me test results before the doctor even gets them. So the first one came up, and I'm looking, and it's saying abnormal. Yeah, duh. And I look at it, it says glucose, too high. Okay, I knew that. Then I look again at the next one, there's 3 tests. I look at the next one, liver enzymes, way up. Okay, I knew that, gotta go to the liver doctor. And then, ding, the third one, dun dun dun, it was kryptonite time. And I pushed the button, and it said abnormal. And I thought, okay, I figured it was. Just don't let it say 4,000 plus. Just let it say anything but 4,000 plus. And it came back 1488. More than half. In 2 months. And suddenly, God showed up. And suddenly, 45 years of praying, and God showed up. Was 45 years too long? It was for me. It was this long for him. But there was a purpose. And the purpose being, even if it's just me standing right here in front of you, I knew that there was going to come a day when I was supposed to share this with you. We all have issues. We all do. Have issues with your children, your finances, your job, your health, your loved ones, depression, addiction, whatever. None of us are untouched. We all have our issues. Mine was huge. To me, it was huge, life-threatening. Go ahead and get it over with already. That was my mindset. Get it over with. I was afraid to eat steak. I was afraid to eat anything that had fat on it because it would trigger pancreatitis. The first thing I did after I found out about my triglycerides, Mitch said, what do you want for dinner? I said, I want steak. It may kill me, but oh, it'll be good. That was the best steak I ever ate, and I ate every bit of it, and I never do that. Because I don't have much of an appetite these days because of the liver, and nothing tastes good to me. But the one thing that the Lord really encouraged me about, when he says something to you, you never forget it. You don't have to even write it down. You know it, because he completely just drops it in your spirit and it becomes a part of you. What saved my life was not the kryptonite medicine. It's not the pump that I don't know how to use yet. It's not the doctors, which I do give them credit because God does use doctors. But God is getting every bit of this glory. And I told him, I will shout it from the mountaintop. Whatever you tell me to say, I'll do it. I'm used to singing. Singing is easy. You got a song, you got words. If you have half a talent, I can get my way through it. But talking and telling my intimate secrets, that's a big deal because I'm kind of private. But he said something to me one time when I was riding on the back of a motorcycle with Mitch. And I was praying. That's what I loved, praying on the back of that bike. And I would just let her rip. And that was my time with God. And one day I said to him, what is going on? What is going on? Why don't I have a purpose? I don't have a purpose. Moses had a purpose. Even Rahab the hooker, she had a purpose. Everybody in the Bible had a purpose. They were all dysfunctional, but that's who he picks, if you haven't figured that out yet. He always picks losers and dysfunctional people who have issues. So here I am with issues, riding on the back of the bike, wondering, what am I ever going to do for you? Am I not good enough? And he said to me, you know the scripture, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love? I thought, well, that came out of nowhere. Yes. Have you ever wondered why love is the greatest? No, not at all. And he said, because when you've lost your faith, shipwrecked your faith, because you have no hope, it's my love that carries you through. Never, ever give up. Because you don't know. I mean, I'm going to tell you this, even though I probably shouldn't. I have been at the brink of suicide because I just couldn't see another way out. But then the Lord would remind me, what if your tomorrow is your and suddenly moment? What if tomorrow I answered your prayer? Daniel prayed 21 days while the prince of Persia fought the angel. 21 days. The angel was on the way to give the answer to Daniel's prayer. But there was conflict in the spirit realm. And God had every intention of answering his prayer. Elisha, not Elijah, Elisha, his little prophet in training, was sitting watching the army of Syria come at them. And his little servant guy says, we're going to die. We are outnumbered. And Elisha said, Lord, let my servant see. Open his eyes so that he sees what I see. And suddenly, there was an army of angels with chariots of fire. I don't have to tell you who won that battle. But again, that was an and suddenly moment. It's on God's time. And when we give up early, you have no idea what could come tomorrow. So, I don't know how long I'm I'm supposed to talk. I don't know. I mean, Mitch said, don't babble. So I'm trying not to babble. But I want to give you an opportunity to take your issues to the Lord, no matter what they are. I've still got issues, family, Mitch, me. What are your issues? Maybe nobody knows them but you. And I want to give you the opportunity, either where you're sitting or at the altar, I don't care. Could we have some soft music playing, Larry? Just anything. I don't care. Nothing wild or nothing. Just kind of something mood setting. I want to give you the opportunity to come to the altar and tell God that you believe in His and suddenly. Make it official. Make it this moment so that you'll remember on this day, at this time, I gave it to God and I told Him, I believe. Help my unbelief. And I'm believing for an end suddenly. If you feel more comfortable sitting in your chair, that's fine. But I just want a few minutes of prayerful meditation. Let go of it. Whatever it is, I don't care how horrible, how scary, how sad. It's not too big, and He knows it. He already knows. He's got the answer coming in His time. And you know what? His time is perfect. His timing is perfect. Brother Jeff?
Well, as she said, you can pray where you are if you'd like to come to the altar. Whatever your issue is, take it to the Lord right now. That's for Him to resolve.
Brother Jeff?
When she called and told me what the Lord was doing, what I said to her was, Kim, would you be willing to share that? There are many people right now in our church that need to hear how God is working. And isn't that encouraging for you, whatever issue it is that you may have? It is for me to know that God is working through some of those darkest times. And just about the time we're ready to cash it in and give up, oftentimes that's exactly when God comes through, just in His timing. Thank you, Kim, for sharing.